Okay, good afternoon. Our next session will feature a performance recorded live in advance by the Houston Contemporary Dance Company. The piece is entitled Viola and is choreographed by Kirati Jinakamwipat with music performed by the Kinetic Ensemble of Houston. We will be joined after the performance for a conversation between Marlena Doyle, Executive Director of the Houston Contemporary Dance Company, and Dr. Rachel Weiner, a clinical psychologist who specializes in treating adults, adolescents, and children, and who served as a consultant on the choreography of the piece. So take a break and please enjoy this performance of Viola by the Houston Contemporary Dance Company.
Good afternoon. My name is Marlena Doyle. I'm the president and CEO of the Institute of Contemporary Dance, which is a dance space that was open during the pandemic. But I'm also the artistic and executive director of Houston Contemporary Dance Company, which you just viewed on the screen. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm going to talk a little bit about the process of making dance during a pandemic and what we did to kind of continue on. So Houston Contemporary Dance Company was founded in 2019, right before the pandemic in October. I had 6 dancers with me at the time. Currently still have 6. 4 of the 6 stayed. They're founding members. I've been in the city of Houston for 20 years, and I have enjoyed having and seeing many dancers over the years of being here in the city. But 4 of the founding members stayed with me through the pandemic to had to shift a little bit during that time. And we did a concert. We have done an actual, our whole second season was during the pandemic. We are a nonprofit organization. We are funded in part by the city of Houston through different grants. And the board of directors felt that if we could dance during a pandemic and continue to be safe for the dancers and the audience, we should do it. And that dance can heal and the arts can heal. And so with that in mind, we continued our second season, and Karate, who was the choreographer of the piece that you just viewed, and I were talking previous to the pandemic. And I talked to her a few times, hiding in my closet from my children, and wanted to speak with her about maybe focusing her choreography in maybe a different realm, not just making a dance just for the sake of making a dance. Houston Contemporary is a repertory company, which means we bring in artists from all over. So Karate is originally from Chicago, and she dances with Kyle Abraham, or AIM. They're actually coming to Houston in May this year. She has been creating dances for many years, and is a former student of mine from a summer program, which is kind of ironic how all those threads come together. And I was looking at a grant from Texas Commission on the Arts, and when you have a grant, sometimes there are parameters around those grants. And one of this particular grant that I was looking at, did have a parameter, and the work needed to be created with a focus in mind. And one of those focuses was mental health. I have Dr. Weiner here, who has been a friend of mine and colleague over the years that I've been in the city. And she immediately came to my mind when I asked Karate if she would be okay working with mental health. Being isolated and being in a state of a global pandemic, Karate felt like she really kind of connected with the mental health stipulation of the grant. And I told her, I have a behavioral consultant for the company and a good friend of mine and a therapist, and she would be wonderful for you to connect with to talk about and to make this dance. So the piece was created on the idea of the 4 seasons. And if you noticed in the choreography, if you go back and look at it, each section is a different season. And she did a lot of work with the dancers after talking to Dr. Weiner about what those seasons mean to them as individuals, to us as a society and a community, and also what your mental health how that reconciles with each season as you go through. So, yeah, Dr. Weiner, do you want to talk a little bit about how you started with Karate?
Yes, sure. I was delighted to be not only part of the collaboration for that piece, but also, being the behavioral health consultant for HCDC, because it is such a wonderful company and the dancers are really cared for by Marlena. So there's a lot of health and wellness focus in the first place. But the conversation that we had, she wanted to know about the group that I have, and as Marlena said, I'm a clinical psychologist, but I also have an arts and cultural enrichment program in which I take group members out into the community for a shared experience. And this takes the place of a traditional talk therapy modality, really because of the data that I observed from this group over 10 years ago, which was that Traditional talk therapy was not working for people who were more socially reticent, some of whom have primary autism diagnoses or social anxiety. But I took them out to see dance and took them to see arts and cultural events around this great city. And getting back to the piece, one of the things that Curati wanted to know was about this group that I do, and I wanted her to not feel like she didn't have enough expertise to choreograph the piece just by being a human being and being an empathic person. I wanted her to just take away the understanding that not everyone has a universal experience. We go through a temporal experience, we go through the pandemic, we enjoy the change of seasons. I gave her actually the example of the seasons. Not everyone loves the spring, and in mental health we do talk about something called unmasked depression, where we think, everything is going to be beautiful, and of course some people are made aware by the stark contrast and the demands of the situation that actually know they're not well. And to just have this awareness that there are idiosyncratic and just differences in experience psychologically and socially, that some people don't feel comfortable with music. It hurts their bodies. And I think this piece was really very profound for, as I understood it, it was for the group, for my outgoing group, that's what I call them, and we're moving in the direction of becoming more outgoing. We're not all there yet, but the feedback that they gave when this piece was actually debuted online for their benefit, for their audience, was that they felt really seen. And I think toward that end, this was an exquisite and generous way of coming together, of exploring this nexus between mental health and art, because you really got it. You really got that we don't have a universal experience subjectively, even if we go through a shared experience, and we make a lot of assumptions. But there was great curiosity that Curati and Marlena both expressed about these group members, wanting them to understand and be comfortable with what was happening on stage, and they took away a lot for that. And the other point I wanted to make about it is that people, not just people with autism, but people with obviously mental health, well, I would say mental illness, but challenges often feel marginalized. And so this piece was very much looking out into the margins and bringing in their experience and making them integral, rather than the opposite of being marginal, right? And so I think that is, I've often told Marlena that she's the standard bearer in terms of the material that she chooses, but also in her treatment of the dancers and her focus on wellness and well-being. And so it's entirely consistent that this piece came to be with Marlena's company. And when, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit more about the company, or if I feel like what we're talking about really does nicely dovetail with the previous sessions. I have some data because Outgoing turns 10 in February, and this group of people, of intrepid young adults, really respond, as most of us do, to art and to enrichment, and really open up in a more genuine and organic way than they might otherwise in an office environment. And really, it's not art therapy, but it really is an in vivo experience that does, I really do consider it at this point a modality of care, and I really hope to to be more a part of that happening within the community, within the health and mental health community, that arts and culture it's not a fringe or new idea at all, that much in the tradition of Oliver Sacks and other great visionary physicians and human beings, that there's a nice convergence and acknowledgement and operationalization of that concept and that notion. So I wanted to also, I keep thanking Marlena because it feels very momentous to come together and share a stage and have this thoughtful conversation in this particular context.
Yeah, well, thank you for, talking to her and kind of getting her, as choreographers over the years that I've been hiring choreographers and having them, set work, sometimes they don't like parameters, sometimes they want to do whatever they want, but I think karate was really up to the task. And then I think after talking to you, she was like, yeah, let's do this. I also feel like she was, like you're saying, outgrowing as your group, and she was very interested in that. And so part of the grant was that not just her making the dance, but also engaging with those members of your group. And we did a Zoom rehearsal. We came in, they usually meet on Sundays, and we did it virtually. We had about 10 or 12 of the members, and they got to watch. So we kind of premiered the work for them, and then we premiered it to the public in a public space at Discovery Green, which is a outdoor theater here. It was very chilly, like it is now.
And windy.
Very windy, and Dr. Weiner did come and speak to the audience too a little bit about the collaboration and about the process of the work. And with dance, dance is a common language to most people. If you can move, you can dance, even if you hear that. And I feel like with this collaboration, we also, if you saw, there were live musicians, and a lot of times concert dance, contemporary dance companies don't use live music, but we should. And so in collaborative nature of the company and what it was founded for, using kinetic ensemble was very vital to the work. So not only did karate have to talk to Dr. Weiner, she also had to talk to kinetic and pick the music. I don't know the composer of the first piece, but I know the last two was Philip Glass, which we all have heard in movies. He does a lot of movie scores and is more of a contemporary composer. But she was able to pick 4 pieces of music that really resonated with her as far as like seasons are concerned and the mental health idea. Do you remember any conversations after she made the work that maybe you had? Because as most grants, you have to do a follow-up, a final report, and we actually came back together, the 3 of us, kind of to talk about, what we learned, how the process was. Can you maybe speak a little bit on that from her or?
From her and from the group members.
And from the group too.
And I should also say there were some parents and some
Right.
people who like dance who wanted to, and oftentimes the group are generous in saying, yes, bring them along. One thing that we've done during the pandemic has been to have more online programs, and I found out during the pandemic how much guest artists mean to them, that those are their favorite things, and even when we do our programs live, we try to have that element. They really respond to, and karate herself said as much, they really respond to the genuineness and vulnerability that's expressed by an artist when they talk about a challenge that they had. And if you think about that piece and you think about the people who were faltering, some of the dancers who were faltering, not themselves, but as part of the choreography, and another dancer would lift them up.
Yeah.
And karate specifically related in the conversation that we had, part of her inspiration for that particular element being her ethnicity and her Asian American heritage, and feeling very much that as a collectivist culture, that when one person is falling, that it's incumbent on the rest of the group to lift them up. And she had a lot to say also about the experience of talking with the group. The group members themselves, as I said before, they're a little reticent. And I should mention that these are people who are now, most of them, if they're not working, they're working on working. Vocational rehab is a big part of what I do with them, and leveraging the kind of the shift in their mood when they do see something like that, that piece, to have a thoughtful conversation with them about what resonates with them personally. And as such, they have a lot more social confidence. Are they the most confident people in the room? Probably seldom, depending on the room. But they really did understand that this piece was made for them, with them in mind, and that dancers came in on a day that they usually have off. And I think I'm trying to think of the specific things that they said. They really understood that this was for them, and they were very touched. And that maybe if something centers on them, that maybe they're not just part of the story, but that they themselves have a story. And that was the input that I shared with Karate, and that's, I think, part of her evolving identity as an artist also, is to receive that kind of feedback and to continue growing in that direction.
Yeah, and since she left us, she's been making lots of work. So I'm hoping that our collaboration kind of inspired her to not just use recorded music and to really think about the community, which I think she's super aware. She's very intelligent. She's very young, but as a choreographer, but very intelligent. I think she really understands now. And I think this piece was something for her too, mentally, because the company she dances with tours, they go all over. They were in Germany, they travel everywhere, and everything kind of obviously stopped. So I think she needed something to kind of get her through as well. And ironically, she did come to Houston during that freeze, where we had lots of unfortunate events with cold temperatures and pipes bursting and people, things not going really great at all. But and she's from Chicago originally, so the first couple days she was like, "This is silly," and then by Wednesday or Thursday she was like, "Okay, yeah, this is a serious problem." But she was able to make the dance virtually for 2 days and then 3 days in the studio. Fortunately, we were able to have electricity and heat for the dancers, but it was very cold. So I think all those things together and like dealing with that as well, and still being able to make a beautiful dance, really came together, and I was very proud of the dancers and their work. And the Institute, which is the space we're in, which it's another business. It's a dance studio, but I opened it during the pandemic as well. We have opened during COVID, so we have had some really intense COVID procedures. The space is brand new, so new air is circulating. We've always worn masks. We also really researched cleaning strategies for the floor, for surfaces, because at that point we weren't sure how it was transmissible. And so safety has always been at the forefront of our organization, as the company, the nonprofit, and as the studio. So, and I think you and I were talking about that backstage, that there's just I think a responsibility for me as a director to take care of them and to make sure we keep going, because as a new organization and starting anew, stopping is not an option, and that's how the board felt too.
But also the resiliency that you've shown and modeled for the community, modeled for your peers, for other companies, for other arts organizations, modeled for my group, the persevering nature. And we talk about, I keep wanting to make these terrible dance puns, like saying your agility, you pivoted, and really, and truly, that's not even a slight exaggeration. Of course, stopping is an option, but choosing to put a lot of thought and showing a lot of grace under pressure is something that affects the whole community. And as Harry Stack Sullivan, who was a psychiatrist, famously said, we are all more, somebody correct me on this, we are all more connected, we are all more alike than otherwise. We are all more simply human than otherwise. There we go. And the kind of parallels that were felt as a result of the creation, the contact with dance. Also, I didn't mention this before, but dance as a modality. We see a lot of visual art and other performing arts, but dance gives people permission to have a body and express themselves in such a way that, sometimes people are very cut off from themselves if they have, psychological challenges. And some of the people in my group started talking about having more dance-related outings in future. So
That would be great. We would
yeah.
love that.
So there are just a lot of different things that we could talk about for the next 45 minutes if we were given 45 minutes. But
Yeah.
it was a wonderful collaboration. It is a wonderful, evolving collaboration, and I'm very grateful to you and to karate and the dancers on behalf of my group and also personally.
Well, thank you, and thank you for working with us and speaking today.
Thank you.
I think we are out of time, but if you want more information on the company, you can go to houstoncontemporary.org. If you're in the city of Houston, we have a performance on February 4th and 5th and April 30th. Support the arts, support dance, and thank you so much for being here. Thank you, Dr. Weiner.
Thank you.